Hello everyone, I hope that you are doing well. So without wasting any time, let's move to the newspaper. First we will identify the important news and then we'll move on to the analysis section. So hello everyone, this is Wednesday, May 11, 2022, the Hindu Delhi edition. As usual, we'll be first identifying the most important news followed by a detailed discussion of the same. So the first very sad news is Santur maestro Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma passed away, okay, and we don't have anything else important here. Now there is a debate regarding this sedition law, that can sedition accused get protection as Supreme Court. Fine, so we will give it a very brief read, okay, and we don't seem to have anything else on this page, okay. Now let's see on the page second, okay, nothing is there, on nothing on page 3 as well. On page 4 let's see, there is nothing. What is this ASI report? No, not required. Page 5, Thrissur gives date with Puram after 2 years, not required, not required. Okay, now on editorial page, control inflation by acting on liquidity, this is important article. The end of a brand, the fall of price, not required. The food regulator need to step up to the plate, okay, we'll see this. Measuring the change, okay, socio-economic survey, we can see this, we'll see if we have time, then we'll see this. Okay, what India should do, learning grounds of Ukraine, okay, we'll see this. Oh, today is a long read, I think. Fine, so let's see text and context page, moderating the publisher platform relationship, not required. Just we'll give a reading to the gist, maybe we can have some examples from here. The Grim forewarning of a global study of birds. How many species of birds are on the IUCN Nature's list? We'll just see the gist, okay, because IUCN we study in our static section. Wolfram Alpha, a free online computer algebra system. Anyone interested in mathematics and algebra can come here to see various graphs, okay. I don't think it would be very important with regards to UPSC, okay, so we will not be doing this. I don't think here anything important, okay. There is this cyclone Asani, okay, now you know about this, okay. Now whole local body falls every 5 years, Supreme Court tells you cannot skip constitutional obligation. That is not that much required, but just know government can't speak for parliament behalf. Obviously parliament is legislature, government is executive. Okay, let's see if anything else is here. Nothing here. More stringent norm for social media platform in work, it aimed at increasing accountability, will initiate talks on government sources, okay. Okay, there is nothing here. Okay, Spain if attacked over hacking, no. Debt norm cloud state borrowings, okay, we'll see this. Hit $15.29 billion, okay, export, beat the target, fine. Discom supply cost to rise 5% on coal imports, okay. I don't think anything else is here. Till first year premium rises 84% for life insurers, LIC premium doubles too, okay. Mercedes may not required. And on the sports page, as usual, we don't have many important news. So with this we have ended identification of the most important news. Now let us go directly to analyze the news, okay. So the first news is, can citizen accused get protection as Supreme Court? Court gives 24 hours for response from center, okay. Solicitor General Tushar Mehta has said what? Whenever there is a misuse, there are constitutional courts and remedies. And what has CGI said? Meanwhile, those booked will be jailed for a month. We cannot ask each and every individual to go to court, okay. So on response of the Solicitor General, CGI has responded these things, okay. The Supreme Court on Tuesday indicated a willingness to wait, though wondering for how long, for government to re-examine the colonial law of sedition. However, court asked the government to respond within next 24 hours on how it intended to protect the interest of people already arrested and facing prosecution under 124A of IPC. The court further sought government response on whether the use of the British era law could be suspended in view of reconsideration process. We will definitely take into the consideration that you are doing a serious exercise of reconsideration of law. We should not appear unreasonable, but there are concerns. One is about the case which are already pending. The other is future use of 124A during the reconsideration. The Attorney General has himself said that there is abuse. How are you going to protect the interest of people from the abuse while reconsidering exercise is on? Okay. The court said that reconsideration process could not be an open-ended one. How long will you take for this reconsideration of the law? Government not committal, non-committal, but Mr. Mehta was non-committal. I may not be able to say. The process has started, he said. He urged the court to trust the earnest tone and spirit of government affidavit which promised the re-examination of the law. There is serious application of mind, he asserted the court. We will decide the question of the law of how much time should be given. Okay. On the issue of protecting people from misuse of sedition law, Mr. Mehta said that those could always move to the court. Okay, and the court in response said that no, one who is inside the jail, how can he move to court, right? We cannot ask each and every individual booked for sedition to go to court. That cannot be the case now when government has itself shown concern about the misuse of civil liberties. Tell us whether people can be protected from abuse while reconsideration is on. Okay, so this is the point. This is a very apt point that both the players are making. Okay, let's see how it unfolds in the coming time. Okay. Okay, there was nothing out here. As usual, we'll be doing the editorial and text and explained pages at last. You know this thing, and now we'll go to the news directly. Okay, there was nothing out here on these pages. Okay, debt now cloud states borrowing. Okay, so what is there? Debt norms cloud states borrowing. So borrowing of the state gets clouded by the debt, the norms of the debt. Deducting off budget borrowings will lift transparency but end up cramping state fiscal room, says IRCA. Let's see. With the state borrowing limit for this year to be set to be cut in tune with the off budget borrowing since 2021, some state that has borrowed more in the pandemic year could face challenges in raising resources. While the rating agency expects the state to borrow 8.4 lakh crores during financial year 23 with a borrowing limit of 3.5% of GSDP, the off budget debt calculation could lead to large downward adjustment in some states' effective borrowing room, as even as uncertainty around payment of GST compensation dues has confounded borrowing plans. Nothing that while including off-budget borrowing raised by the state entity in state-owned debt was raise the transparency. Some states could find the change difficult to comply with given the perceived proliferation of such borrowings since COVID-19 onset. Okay, those facing large cuts in their debt ceiling on account would have to pare borrowing and resort to ways and mean advances for overdraft from RBI. It was difficult to gauge the downward adjustment to be made to each state borrowing due to paucity of data on off-budget borrowing and guarantees extended by the state. So what does it want to say? The center typically conveys the net borrowing ceiling for each state at the start of fiscal, and this year it has indicated that all incremental off-budget borrowing since 2021 will be adjusted from the ceiling. States have also been offered an additional borrowing limit of 0.5% of GDP tied to specified power sector reforms, a levy equivalent to contribution of national pension system for the government employees. Tentative participation. The uncertainty about borrowing room appears to be reflecting in state tentative participation in auctions of state SDLs. On Tuesday, even an yield on SDLs spiked. Haryana and Punjab borrowed 2,000 crores through, though they had not indicated any plan to participate in this week's issuance. Maharashtra and Andhra together raised 500 crores more than they had planned. ICRA economists noted that timing of revenue flows from center for GST compensation, tax devolution and the rupee 1 lakh crore loan offered for capital spending will be critical, as front loading the remittances would lift the likelihood of enhanced capital spending, whereas back ending would pare the borrowing amount. So what had happened? Okay, the new debt norms that includes what? Restrictions or ceilings of budget expenditure. Okay, expenditure, right? This will lead to what? This will lead to downfall of states borrowing, especially during pandemic recovery. You understand now? And everything else is just to make us understand this, right? So this is the case. Let's see how this news unfolds. In 2 to 3 days we'll get to know how it is unfolding. Okay, and if we have something here, no. Okay, with this we have ended the discussion of the news. Now let us go directly to discussion of editorial. Okay, so this is our first editorial. Control inflation by acting on liquidity. Okay, महंगाई, liquidity मतलब तरलता. Okay, I don't need to go in such detail in Hindi details, right? but for your information I have written that inflation in India cannot be described just as cost push. An abundance of liquidity has also been an important factor. So what does the author says? That this inflation cannot be categorized only as cost push. We know inflation is described at two levels, right? One is at cost push on consumer side, right, and demand pull. Oh sorry, I have written wrong. Yes, demand pull on consumer side and cost push on producer side, right? So what he's saying, that it cannot just be defined as cost pushed inflation. Why? Because recently we have seen that in this inflation which India is facing now is being more related to what? Cost pushed or the production side or the supply chain side inflation, and not the demand side inflation. Why? Because demand has been low due to pandemic, right? So it is basically attributed to the cost side. But the author says that no, it should not only be described just as cost side or the production side, but also abundance of liquidity has been an important factor. So he says that there has been an abundance of liquidity in the system. Okay, now how he is going to justify this? Let's see. Because since it is not a demand pull inflation and demand has been low, right? So it is why? Because the purchasing power has been low, and since the purchasing power is low means liquidity should have been low, but he says that there has been abundance of liquidity. So we have to understand why he is saying that. Let's see. The recent action of RBI to raise the repo rate by 40 basis point and CRR by 50 basis point. Okay, so what is the repo rate increase? 40 basis point and CRR by 50 basis point is recognition of the serious situation with respect to inflation in our economy. Inflation has assumed a menacing proportion in almost all countries. The situation is worst in United States, where consumer price inflation (CPI) is at 8.56, a level not reached for several decades. Consumer price index inflation in India is about 6.95. It is expected to rise further in April. India's CPI inflation has been fluctuating around high levels. As early as October 2020, it has hit the peak of 7.61. It has remained at a high level of over 6. It has remained at a high level of over 6 since April 2020. It did not come down after December 2020, but has started rising significantly from January. On the other hand, the WPI has remained in double digit. Okay, the GDP implicit price deflator based inflation rate is 9.6%. Fine. So deflator based price index rate, the inflation is 9.6%, CPI is about 7%, and WPI, as we know, is about 12-13% in India right now, right? Impact on production. Even though RBI mandated is with respect to CPI inflation, okay, what is the RBI mandate? It is with respect to CPI inflation. Policymaker cannot ignore the behavior of other price indices. In 8-9 crisis, Central Bank of Developed Country, particularly Fed, means the Federal Bank of USA, has been blamed for overlooking the sharp rise in asset prices, even though CPI inflation was modest. After the advent of COVID-19, the major concern of policymakers all over the world was to revive the demand. Okay, as I said, because the demand has been low. As I said, why demand has been low? Due to pandemic, right? Okay, pandemic has done what? Diversion of funds towards health plus basic needs. Okay, this was sought to be achieved by raising government expenditure. Obviously, this is the standard Keynesian prescription. The several severe lockdown imposed to prevent the spread of COVID-19 restricted the mobility of people, goods and services. Okay, yes, this is true. Thus, the expansion in government expenditure did not immediately result in increased production in country where the lockdown was taken seriously. Okay, so expansion in government's expenditure does not translate immediately into increased production in such countries where the lockdown was taken seriously. India belongs to this category. Yes, there was a stringent lockdown in India. As Rao pointed out in 1950, Keynesian multiplier did not work where there were supply constraint. Okay, so Keynesian multiplier did not work where there were supply constraint, as in developing countries. Okay, this is why he argued that multiplier operated in nominal terms rather than in real terms in such countries. Something similar has happened in present case, where supply constraint come from non-mobility factors of production. Okay, so supply constraint is coming from where? Non-mobility factors of production. Issue of inflation. Nevertheless, the prescription of enhanced government expenditure is still valid under the present circumstances. Okay, perhaps the increase in output could happen with a lag and also with the relaxation of restriction. Initially, the focus of monetary policy in India has been to keep the interest rate low and increase the availability of liquidity throughout the various channels, some of which has been newly introduced. However, the growth rate of money was below the growth rate in Reserve Bank. Okay, in the reserve money. This is because lower credit growth, which depends upon business sentiments and investment climate. Thus, the money multiplier is lower than usual. The government borrowing program, which was larger, went though smoothly thanks to abundant liquidity. Okay, even as the economy picked up steam in 2021-22, the inflation also became an issue. As mentioned at the beginning, there is a worldwide phenomena in the US. This is a worldwide phenomenon. In the US, the explanation has been quite simple. There has been balance sheet explosion of Fed. On January 1, 2020, the total asset of Fed stood at 4.17 trillion, and in April 2022, it was 8.96 trillion. This massive expansion asset is a result of quantitative easing, which essentially means liquidity support provided by the Fed. The Fed chairman has made a strong statement expressing the need to reduce size of asset. The Fed is planning to shrink its balance sheet by 95 billion a month. It raised the policy rate by 50 basis point a few days ago. In India too, there was a shift in monetary policy. The latest monetary policy reiterates the stance as one to remain accommodative while focusing on withdrawal of accommodation to ensure that their inflation remains within the target going forward while supporting the growth. Without efforts to curtail liquidity, inflation will not come down. Okay, so yes, it is true, we have to cut down the liquidity because production is not going on, right, as it should have been. So liquidity needs to be cut so that inflation is tamed. I'll go back to the point where I have been making several times recently. While discussing inflation, analysts including policymakers focused almost exclusively on increases in price of individual commodities such as crude as primary cause of inflation. The Russia-Ukraine war is cited as a primary cause. True, in many situations, including the current one, there may be the trigger. Supply distribution due to domestic or external factor may explain the behavior of individual prices. Okay, so supply disturbance due to domestic or external factor may explain the behavior of individual prices, but not the general price level, which is what inflation is about. Given a budget constraint, there will only be an adjustment of relative prices. Besides the fact that any cost push increase in one commodity may get generalized, it is adjustment that happens and at the macro level which becomes critical. A long time ago, Friedman said, it is true that upward push is wagging in the wages produces inflation, not because it was unnecessarily inflationary, but because it happened to be the mechanism which forced and increased in the stock of money. This is adjustment in macro tools of liquidity that sustain inflation. Inflation and growth. Inflation, the possible trade-off between inflation and growth has long history in economic literature. The Philip curve has been analyzed theoretically and empirically. Okay, the Philip curve. Tobin called Philip curve a cruel dilemma. Okay, Tobin has called what Philip curve a cruel dilemma because it suggests that full employment was not compatible with price stability. It gives what inflation versus employment thing, right? Like this or this, whatever it is. Okay. The graph can be anything, but it is between inflation and employment kind of thing. The critical question flowing from this discussion on trade-off is whether cost push factor can only themselves generate inflation. Tobin said at one place that inflation is neither demand push nor demand pull, not cost push, or rather it is both, even though he did not agree with Friedman's extreme position that there would be no pure cost push inflation. In current situation, it is sometimes argued that the inflation will come down if some part of the increase in crude prices is absorbed by the government. There may be a case for reducing the duties on petroleum product for the simple reason that one segment of the population should not bear excessive burden. The same consideration applies to food prices. But to think that it is a magic wand through which inflation can be avoided is wrong. If additional burden is borne by the government, it is not government through loss of revenue is not offset by expenditure, the overall deficit will widen. Okay, so government burden, if the additional burden is borne by the government, which means what, deficit will widen, the borrowing program will increase, and additional liquidity support may have to be required. Concomitant decisions. Commenting on the increased repo rate and rise in CRR, some have commented that this is double whammy. No, these are committal decisions. These are concomitant decisions. Central banks cannot order interest rate. Central bank cannot order interest rate. For example, the rise in interest rate on stick. Appropriate actions must be taken to contract liquidity. This is what the rise in CRR will do. In absence of rise in CRR, liquidity will have to be sucked by OMOs. As RBI governor put it in the statement, liquidity conditions need to be modulated in line with the policy action and stances to ensure their full and efficient transmission to rest of the country. Okay, inflation in India cannot be described as just cost push. Abundance of liquidity has been an important factor. The April monetary policy statement talks of liquidity overhang of the order of 8.5 lakh crores. Beyond a point, inflation itself cannot hinder growth. Negative real growth rate. Okay, negative real rate of interest on savings and not conductive to growth. If you want to control inflation, action on liquidity is very much needed, with a concomitant rise in the interest rate on depositors' loan. Okay, so this is what he wants to say, that the inflation that we are witnessing today is not just only supply side or cost push, but it is also depends upon many factors, including the high amount of liquidity in the system. So as I suggest, as per author, what should be done? The excess of liquidity in the world should be sucked up to some other places, right? So we are done with this article, a good article, but again you cannot make notes out of it. Okay. This food regulator needs to step up to the plate. The FSSAI should be impartial and uninfluenced by same food industry which it has to control and regulate. I don't think anything will be there, but let's see. Okay, health concerns are there. So what does FSS look? As far as I understand, the civil services means you won't have a question regarding directly FSSAI. If there is a question, it would be coming in prelims, and that too directly on FSSAI and not these meetings, right? And now what are the larger picture? Why do we need FSSAI? Because food has a health concern. The labeling should indicate what is the content of the food and how it is prepared, and children have been left out. Means the key policy decisions, the children should also be included as an important key stakeholder, right? On these 3 points you can discuss these things if it comes out. Okay, you write 2 points here, 2 points for this and 2 points for this. You are already having a 6-point answer, and trust me, you won't have to write on just this. This would be at most a part of the answer. Okay, measuring the change, India should invest more to enhance the reliability of various socio-economic surveys. Okay, fair enough. Better technology, better man, better machine. Okay, better muscle is needed here. It wants to say that. If you want, you can give both these a read. I don't think it is important that much. The learning grounds of Ukraine. Over the 2 months of Russia-Ukraine conflict, it is time for India to draw some interim lessons. What is the first lesson? Alliance matter. Obviously, alliance has mattered. Russian alliance with India, Indian alliance with Russia, Russia with China, US with Europe. All of the alliance were reignited. Okay, no matter how powerful a country may be. So while David in the conflict has been backing Europe, the NATO, the Goliath too is putting out shops to make the China sentiment stay. Okay, and second thing is yardstick of deterrence capacity. You have to understand that what is nuclear a yardstick of deterrent capacity? Yes or no? If yes, then any other weapon of higher grade than that of nuclear weapon is possible to manufacture. Then what? Then this deterrence capacity will the yardstick will have to be will have to rise this yardstick even more, and then these nuclears will be available to any one and other person, and this will lead to again problems in the society. Give it a read. I don't think it would be very important. Now come to text and context page. Moderating the publisher platform relationship. What does the new Canadian bill strive to achieve? How do tech giant profit from the new profit of the new publishers? Canadian government introduced a bill that seeks to make internet platforms such as Google, Facebook pay new publisher for use of their content. Okay, the government website lists 4 expected outcome of this legislation. This includes framework that supports fair business relationships. Okay, sustainability in news ecosystem, maintenance of press and independence, and diversity within the new landscape. Google has responded to this new bill by stating that it has serious concern about some of the unintended consequences of the proposed Online News Act and all those things. Google is always against the state taking control of things because it is Google who is at loss in such things, right? And the green forewarning of global study on bird. The state of world bird and annual review of environmental resources published on 5th May has revealed that population of 48% of 10,994 surviving species of bird is declining. Bird contribute towards many ecosystem services that either directly or indirectly benefit humanity. Okay, the continued growth of human population and of per capita rate of consumption lead directly to conversion of degradation and all those things, loss of biodiversity. Okay, so birds are being counted as usual. And what are the important of bird? They have their own ecological niche. Fine. Okay, so with this we come to end of today's newspaper. Your homework is as usual. Comment below which article you will use with slash in which GS answers, right? You know I read each and every comment. So with this, I would like to close today's session. And before you go, please visit our channel page. You'll find many interesting videos there, right? So with this, I am ending today's newspaper session and I take your leave now. So friends, I really hope that you like this video. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe our channel and share this video with your friend. Follow us on Telegram as well. Also, keep studying hard, keep following your dreams and keep tuned to our channel. Comment below for any suggestion. Till then, goodbye, good luck.